Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be having a look at the new Clash report for Vcad that will allow us to review Clash data inside of Power BI. Now, before we get to Power BI, we need to do some work on the Navisworks side of things, just to make sure that everything functions correctly. So as you can see, I've set up an example. I have my model in, and I've run a test. And from this test, I have a little over 900 clashes. A good portion of those are still in the new status, but I have some in the other status as well. And I've set up a few comments and assigned some of the clashes to colleagues, just so we have some proper data that we can then review inside of Power BI. Now, in order for this to function, we need to have a way to correctly identify the objects coming from the Clash data with the objects coming from the Vcad extracted data that we're going to be using inside of our report. So to do that, let's have a look at a couple options that we need to set up beforehand. So let's go up on over to the options, and then we're going to check out interface, quick properties, and definition. As you can see here, I've set up 3 quick properties. In most cases, these 3 quick properties will allow you to correctly identify the objects. So those would be source file, layer, and GUID. These 3 should be able to uniquely identify the objects in the model, and then allow us in Power BI to map those objects with the ones coming from the Vcad data. In some edge cases, these 3 properties will not be sufficient, or you may not have all these properties for all the elements. So you may need to do a little analysis to find which properties correctly identify your items. But as I said, most cases, we shouldn't have to worry too much. Just go with these defaults. And if not, you can tweak it and test it. So let's apply these options. And now I've already run my test, as I've said. So what we need to do now is we need to export this Clash result. So let's head on over to report. You can choose which one of these you want to, which content you want to include. For most cases, I'd say this is a good default. We're going to include all statuses. Unless you really know what you're doing, these are the options I would go with. We're also going to create a single report with all the tests combined. So in this case, I just did 1 test, but if I had multiple tests, this would give me a single XML file with multiple tests inside of that same file. And then, of course, very important, you do need to define the report format as XML, because this will be the input for our Power BI template. So with this done, you can go ahead and you can write the report. And then we're going to head on out to Power BI. So here we are in Power BI. I've opened up the Clash template from Vcad. And first thing we see, we're prompted to give some information to load up all the data. So first thing we need to give it is the Clash path. So what it's asking here is the full path to that XML file that we've exported from Navisworks. So I'm just going to type it in here or paste it in. This is very important. It needs to be the full path plus the file name and the file extension. Otherwise, it will not work. And then once I've done this, I also want to check those quick properties down here. So you see this is a text that I can edit that basically has the quick properties that we were looking at in Navisworks. As a default, you'll be prompted with the ones we were showing before, so GUID, layer, and source file. If you change the quick properties in Navisworks, make sure to change them here as well. Otherwise, the Power BI won't be able to match the data. So I'm going to go with the default. I'm just going to go ahead and click load. And what's going to happen now is basically the Power BI template is going to do 2 things. It's going to, number 1, it's going to contact the Vcad services and download the Vcad data for the model that I'm using right here. So that I'll get a list of all the objects and all the properties. And then the second thing, you can see a little in the description of the queries that are being loaded, is it is basically unpacking the data from the XML file that we indicated. It's taking that data, it's unpacking it into tests, clash results, clash elements, clash properties, all the bits and pieces that we need in order to represent the clash information inside of Power BI. So here we go. It's done loading up the data. We can see it will load up my model. So we see it's the same model that we were looking at in Navisworks. Another important thing is you need to make sure that you are creating the template with the same version of the model that has been used in Navisworks. Otherwise, again, this won't work. Okay, so let's have a look at what the template actually looks like. Let's make some room. And we can see up here, first thing, we can select a test. So I just exported a single test, but as we said before, you can select multiple tests, and here you'll be able to switch between them. So let's just go ahead and load up my clash test. Okay, so up top, I get a bit of an overview of the current tests I'm looking at. So I can see those 966 clashes that we were looking at before, divided for the various statuses. Also, I have a bunch of filters that I can play around with. If I have clash groups, I can use those. I can filter based on a clash name, or I can do something more generic. I can have a look at different statuses, for example. And you can see, of course, everything is reacting to my selections. Down here, the model is showing me the clashes based on what I'm selecting. I can also choose to see all the things that were assigned to me, for example. And you can see here, these are the clashes that I've worked on. Okay, so it will give us a bit of an overview of the situation. Of course, there's also time filters. So if I input when the clash was defined, or if I have different approval dates, I can also filter based on those. And if I made a bunch of filters and then I realize I want to go back to sort of a clean slate, I can use the clear slicer button over here that will reset everything to the original state. Then let's say I identify a specific clash I want to look at. So let's, for example, let's again pull up my clashes, or maybe not just my clashes, but let's have a look at just one subset of statuses. I'm going to have a look at the active clashes. I want to see what we're working on right now. So here again, I have my overview. Of course, right now I'm looking at the X-ray mode. I can freely switch to the hide not selected mode to get a little more a clear vision of the elements involved. And then I can drill down and focus in on a single clash. So for example, I can check out clash 10. If I zoom in, I can see the objects that are related to the various clashes. So if I check out clash 1, I can see these are the two objects involved. Right here, I'm seeing that the mapping of the items went correctly. So I have one item, I have item number 1 and item number 2. And these are some of the information for those items, specifically the quick properties that we were looking at earlier. And I can also see a tree representation of where those items are within the Navisworks tree. Finally, if I want more information about the clash, I can check out the quick tooltip we have set up, which will give us an overview of the status, creation date, assigned to, all this kind of information, including a table with every comment that was defined for the clash. So I know when it was assigned, who it was assigned to, and also if there are any user-made comments, I will be able to find them here. Of course, as always, this is all happening in Power BI, so I can feel free to come, edit the report, add things I might need, remove things that I don't need, and in general, change it up however I wish to. So now you've seen a quick run through of the new clash template for Vcad that allows us to review Navisworks clash data inside of Power BI. Thank you for joining me, and stay tuned for upcoming videos.